Wraith by William Toney. Chapter 19. Mind Games. The city was alive with tension. From the glass offices of City Hall to the dimly lit streets where Aaron tread in silence, the atmosphere felt charged, as though the city itself was holding its breath. Aaron and Lilah walked side by side, the questions in her eyes louder than her voice as she processed everything that had just happened. Aaron's gaze darted from shadow to shadow, his heightened senses scanning for threats. He'd promised her answers, but he knew this wasn't the time. The diner encounter had rattled him more than he cared to admit. Who was that man? Lilah finally broke the silence, her voice steady but tinged with unease. And why did he look at you like that? Aaron hesitated. How could he explain the mess he'd entangled himself in without pushing her further away? He was connected to something I've been dealing with, he said carefully. That's not an answer, she shot back, stepping in front of him to block his path. Her dark eyes searched his face. You've been different, Aaron, since the attack. Since... She hesitated, her voice faltering. Since I woke up. Aaron exhaled slowly. Lilah, there are things I can't explain right now. Things you don't want to know. She crossed her arms, her stance defiant. Try me. Aaron looked at her, his heart heavy. The woman he loved stood before him, unwavering despite the storm raging around them. Yet he couldn't bring himself to fully pull her into the darkness that had consumed his life. I'll tell you everything, he promised, but not here. Not yet. Before she could argue, a faint buzz filled the air, followed by the hum of tires on wet pavement. Aaron turned sharply to see a black sedan cruising slowly down the street. The car's windows were tinted, but his sharp eyes caught the silhouette of the occupants inside. Aaron's instinct screamed danger. He grabbed Lilah's hand. We need to move. What? She asked, startled by the urgency in his voice. He didn't wait to explain. Pulling her along, Aaron turned down a narrow alley, his heart pounding. The sedan sped up, its engine roaring as it followed. Inside City Hall. Eris lounged in a leather armchair in Wright's office, idly twirling the pendant that hung around her neck. The councilman stood by the window, his hands clasped behind his back as he stared out at the city. You've been quiet, Eris remarked, her tone teasing. A penny for your thoughts, Charles? Wright turned to her, his expression sour. I sent men to investigate Marcus and his gang, and now they're missing too. Whoever's behind this isn't stopping. Eris smirked. You're worried about pawns again. Really, Charles, you're so predictable. If they're gone, replace them. That's what pawns are for. He clenched his fists, his frustration barely contained. I need control. If I'm going to become mayor, I can't afford loose ends. She tilted her head, her smile widening. And you think I'm the one who'll tie them up? Darling, I'm here to nudge you in the right direction, not to clean up your messes. Wright took a step closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You're here because I let you stay. Don't forget that. Eris laughed, the sound light and mocking. Oh, Charles, let me? Sweetheart, you wear that pendant because I let you. Remember who holds the leash here. Before Wright could respond, Eris's eyes flicked to the office door. Speaking of messes, the door opened, revealing one of Wright's lackeys, pale and shaking. Councilman, there's been another incident. Wright's jaw tightened. What now? The Wraith. He was seen near the diner. Another one of Marcus's men is dead. Eris's grin widened. Well, our mystery man strikes again. Wright turned to her, his frustration boiling over. Do something about this. Eris shrugged, her eyes gleaming with amusement. Why would I? This Wraith seems far more interesting than your pitiful campaign drama. Wright stormed toward her, but Eris raised a hand, her power flaring. His vision blurred, and for a moment, the room seemed to tilt. He stumbled, gripping the desk for support as whispers filled his mind, disorienting and mocking. Careful, Charles, Eris said, her voice honeyed and sharp. You wouldn't want to bite the hand that feeds? Wright glared at her, but he didn't respond. Eris chuckled, the sound echoing in his skull like a taunt. That's better, she purred, leaning back in her chair. Now why don't you go play politician and let me enjoy the show? The chase, Aaron and Lilah darted through the maze of alleyways, the sedan's headlights slicing through the darkness behind them. Lilah's breath came in short gasps as she struggled to keep up. "Aaron, what's going on?" she demanded. "Trouble," he replied shortly, his grip on her hand tightening. "Stay close." The sedan screeched to a halt, and the sound of car doors slamming echoed through the alley. Men in dark suits emerged, their footsteps heavy against the wet pavement. "Find them!" one of them barked. Aaron pulled Lilah into the shadows, pressing her against the wall. "Stay quiet," he whispered, his eyes scanning the alley for an escape route. The men spread out, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Aaron's heart raced as he calculated his next move. He couldn't let them find Lilah, or himself. He needed to end this quickly. He stepped out of the shadows, his presence sudden and commanding. "Looking for me?" The men turned, their flashlights illuminating his face. "It's him!" one of them shouted. Aaron moved before they could react. Using his abilities, he sent a trash can hurtling toward one of the men, knocking him to the ground. Another lunged at him, but Aaron sidestepped, delivering a swift kick that sent the man sprawling. Lilah watched in stunned silence, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. This wasn't the Aaron she knew. This was something else. Someone else. As the last man charged, Aaron raised his hand. The man froze mid-step, his body rigid as if held by an invisible force. Aaron's eyes burned with intensity as he spoke. "Tell your boss to back off. This is his only warning." Now, he released the man, who collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. The remaining men scrambled to their feet and fled, dragging their unconscious comrade with them. Aaron turned to Lilah, his expression conflicted. "I can explain." Her eyes were wide with shock. "What? What did you just do?" Aaron hesitated, the weight of his secret pressing down on him. "It's a long story, but for now, we need to get out of here." Elsewhere, in the depths of the city, Jason Black knelt in an abandoned warehouse, his hunting knife gleaming in the faint light. Blood dripped from its blade, pooling beneath the body of his latest victim. He wiped the knife clean with a rag, his movements calm and methodical. His eyes burned with a fanatic intensity as he muttered to himself. "They don't deserve to live," he said, his voice low and fervent. "Not after what they've done." He sheathed the knife, his gaze drifting to the crude sketches of the Wraith pinned to the wall. "One day," he whispered, "you'll see I'm right. One day I'll prove I'm better." The Wraith's shadow loomed over the city, but Jason Black intended to carve his own path, one far bloodier than Aaron could imagine.